bike's been around in other parts of the world for about a year now. It's only just come to England for some reason. This is a new Harley Davidson, a proper new Harley Davidson, not just, you know, a new paint scheme, a few new badges. This is from the ground up a new Harley Davidson, which comes around about once every 50 years. I know in America Harleys are very cheap. That's what I think a lot of Americans need to understand, is that owning a Harley Davidson in England and other parts of the world is not as cheap as it is in America. So this over here is about £5,800 on the road, which is, yeah, pretty good. That's a similar sort of price to the Kawasaki Vulcan V800. Similar, it's a little bit cheaper than the Yamaha 900. So there is other competitors, mainly Japanese competitors, in this sort of price bracket. But this is a Harley Davidson, and for some people, just that badge on the side of the tank there means a lot. It's worth a lot more than any sort of Japanese badge. I don't know if I necessarily subscribe to that opinion, to be honest. A bike's a bike to me. I don't try to get caught up in the whole romance and all that shit. But being completely honest, I wasn't expecting a lot. When I first heard about this about a year ago, I just looked at it on paper and looked at the pictures of it and just thought, well, that's going to be crap. But I probably shouldn't be so judgmental. And straight away, sitting on this thing, it doesn't feel like a Harley. It feels like a Japanese cruiser. And that's not actually a bad thing. I say that almost as a compliment, because it's smooth. The suspension's actually quite good on all the bumps. The engine, again, I think that's the biggest difference straight away, where you know this isn't a Harley, it's from the engine. Because straight away it's got a lot more snap. And it doesn't sound like a Harley at all. I mean, listen. So yeah, there's no push rods. It's liquid cooled 750 V-twin. Overhead cams instead of push rods. So yeah, it doesn't sound like a Harley. But I do actually quite like the sound of it. It's got a nice little rasp. Sounds a little bit cheeky, but it's not too offensive. Ground clearance isn't actually that bad compared to most other Harleys. It's actually got some ground clearance. So yeah, it feels like you can actually hustle this thing a little bit. It doesn't have ABS, this bike, which for some new riders may be a bit of an issue, but to be honest, for the sort of bike it is, I don't think it really makes that much difference. But yeah, the front brake doesn't have a lot of stopping power. I mean, it's alright. The back brake, however, is actually pretty decent. It's got quite a nice feel for it. Again, ergonomically, it doesn't really feel like a Harley. It's a fairly neutral position. There's actually a little bit more bend in your legs, as you can see. The pegs are sort of in the middle rather than further forward, which, again, novice riders will probably get on with that a little bit better. So far, there's nothing on this, apart from the badges on the tank. There is nothing on this, really, that tells me I'm riding a Harley. Sounds alright, sounds quite fruity. Throttle response isn't too bad. Once you get up to about 30, it's okay. Anything below sort of 20 miles an hour, it's a little bit choppy, to be honest. It does lurch forward and back and forward a little bit. It's not really too much of a problem, but certainly, yeah, you do notice it below 20 miles an hour. And it might be something to do with the fact that this has got the Vance and Hines pipes on, so therefore it may need, you know, a bit of adjustment, remapping or something. I don't know. But like I said, not too much of an issue, but certainly not perfect fueling down low. My other sort of gripe so far is the gearbox. It's actually quite light. It's definitely not as clunky as the Harleys, which I guess is a good thing, but it's kind of gone the opposite way. If anything, it's too light. It doesn't really feel that direct, so I have missed a gear once or twice, only really in sort of first or second. And I've had trouble getting into neutral a couple of times. Again, that might just be because it's a brand new bike and, you know, it needs its first service and its oil change and all that jazz. But just the feel of the gearbox, it just doesn't really feel that slick yet. Traffic doesn't look too bad today, actually, considering the time. What is it, like 4 o'clock? 20 past 4, if that clock's right. Anyway, there we go. This is the overall speedo here. It's not too bad. It looks a bit bare, to be honest. I guess it's because the speedo only goes up to 110, so there's just a lot of empty space on there. But everything's sort of tucked into that, so your idiot lights and everything are all sort of tucked into that. And it's just that one single dial, which in some ways looks quite neat, I think. It'd be nice to have a rev counter, but I'm not going to worry too much about that. And now it's starting to get a bit warm under my backside. But then that's a pretty common thing with just cruisers in general, to be honest, so it's not specifically a Harley thing. But certainly I think the fact that this is liquid cooled, there's a big old radiator at the front, that's going to help massively to dissipate some of that heat. So yeah, this speed, sort of below 20, yeah, it does feel a little bit choppy, doesn't feel great. Once you get up to about sort of 30, suddenly it feels really smooth. But anyway, yeah. So yeah, we know what it's like in a city. But yeah, who cares about that really? I mean, it's not difficult to make a bike that handles well in the city. See what it's like out here in the countryside. Does make some nice noises. You don't get that sort of mechanical, sort of thumpy, rattly noise from the sort of push rods like you get from the other standard Harleys, but it's nice. It does sound good with these pipes. To be honest, the standard pipes, yeah, not so much. Oh, lots of shit in the roads. It revs quite quickly actually, but it does hit the rev limiter quite quickly as well. Changes direction quickly because of the narrow tyres. Yeah, it's a lot easier to fling down these roads than the Sportster is. I think it's actually a little bit quicker as well, certainly than the 883. It does only have rubber foot pegs, it doesn't have the metal blobs on the bottom, so you do still scrape the foot pegs a little bit, like this. But, oops, I think there was something else I scraped there, whoops. So yeah, that's still a bit of an issue, but to be honest, again, for sort of newer riders, and again, for the sort of bike it is, ground clearance isn't actually that bad. So yeah, the tyres on this thing are Michelin Scorchers, which are kind of the official stock Harley tyre. They're probably the best tyres for Harleys, to be honest, the Scorchers. Some people like the Avons, and to be honest, on a bike like this the Avons might actually work quite well, but the problem is with the Avons is they don't have reinforced sidewalls, so on a big heavy Harley that tends to make them a little bit wallowy through the corners, makes them feel like you've got a bit of a flat tyre almost. But, this bike's quite a lightweight, so I can't imagine that would be that much of an issue. But yeah, they seem okay, these tyres. It's a very flat profile on the tyres. Front one's not too bad, but the profile on the back, it's really, really flat. So you do feel a little bit of sort of difference between the front and the back. The front wants to turn, and the back one there's a little bit of resistance almost. Okay, so let's see what this bike's like on a nice British B-road. Bridge. Not a lot of torque in the higher gears. But take a little bit of time to spin up. Slip the clutch a little bit just to get the revs up. loads of shit in the roads. Slippery. This feels a lot better down this road than the Sportsters did. Give it that. Just trying to dodge all the lumps of gravel in the road. It's alright. It's not lightning fast, but it certainly feels a little bit more responsive than some of the bikes like this I've ridden. I think that's largely down to the engine. It's funny, I'm sure a lot of Harley guys are just going to scoff at this thing and go, that's not a real Harley. Well, who cares really? I mean, you know, it's like when the XR 1200 came out and the V-Rod came out. Those two bikes I'm actually really keen to ride because to me they seem like the perfect Harley for the sort of riding that I do and the sort of bikes that I like. But they never really sold very well because Harley owners just look at it and go, it's not a real Harley. Which I think is silly really. I mean, every time Harley try and do something a little bit different and try to make something a little bit different, they just get berated by all their fans. Which is, I think is a shame. I think fair play for them actually doing something a little bit different, trying to get some new fans and a new audience. You're never going to please all Harley fans, I don't think. I mean, you get a lot of Harley fans who say, you know, there hasn't been a real Harley since 1952. They're a bit funny like that, Harley fans. Some Harley fans, not all. I think that's just bikers in general, to be honest. Okay, let's open this thing up then. Pull that out now. All the stops. Can't give it any more than that. Yeah, it feels a little bit sketchy at speed. Yeah, it's doesn't like going really quick, to be fair. I think we got nearly up to triple digits then, but certainly doesn't like doing it. That's when you can feel the suspension sort of reach its limits really, when you get up to that sort of speed. It's so frustrating, isn't it, driving a car? You can understand why people get so bloody angry sat in these cars in traffic and stuff. It's just depressing. It's bad enough when you get stuck in traffic on a bike, but at least on a bike you can filter through most of it. What have we got behind me here? See, I can't actually see what bike this is behind me because the mirrors are vibrating too much and all I can see is my elbow. I think it might be... Is it a VFR 800? I can't actually see. Oh, it might even be a Triumph. I don't know. It's a yellow bike. Yeah, I think it is a VFR 800. What the fuck are you doing? What the fuck? Interesting place to stop. Oh, there's just a guy in the middle of the road. What's going on with everyone today? The seat's really comfy actually. The overall position isn't too bad. Your feet are generally quite high up compared to other Harleys, but it's not uncomfortable. Yeah, the front brake's actually not as bad as I thought it was. You just have to really grab a handful of it, and there's not a lot of feel. It's quite spongy, but once you do sort of learn to grab it, it does pull you up enough. I tend to use the back and the front together quite a lot anyway, so again, for the sort of bike it is, not too bad to be honest. Ooh. Foot pegs, foot pegs, foot pegs. Does hit the rev limiter quite easily in the first few gears. Gearing's quite short in the first few gears, which makes it quite good through town. Not so good on the open road. Ooh, hard on the brakes. Okay, so let's have a look at this thing. Now, I don't know about you, but I'm still a little bit unsure about the looks on this. I think from this angle, it looks nice. I like the proportions of it. I like the sort of blacked out style of it. It looks quite nice, I think, from that angle. From the front, see, when I look at that headlight shroud, I just think like, you know, some cheap £20 cowl off eBay. It just looks like some cheap cafe racer add-on, a bit like those gaiters there as well. It just doesn't really scream quality to me. And especially, I mean, it's not too bad in black, but when you see like the blue and the red ones and the other colours, that cowl is still black, so it just looks like a bolt-on. Yeah, so not too keen on that. It'd be interesting to see what it looks like with just the headlight. I do like the air cleaner though. I like the little 750 liquid cooled thing written on there. It's quite nice. I like that. I like the sort of fins. I like the exhaust. Again, the shocks do look very budget, and they are very budget, but they seem to do a pretty good job. It's not ugly, but I don't think it's especially pretty either. Does it look better than the Sportster? No, I don't think it does. Does it look better than the Kawasaki Vulcan? No, I don't think it does. So it's probably not the prettiest, and probably not the fastest, the best performing bike in its class. But it has got a Harley Davidson badge, and it does sound wicked with these bikes. It's actually quite good fun to rip, because yeah, there's not a huge amount of power, but it's all accessible, it's all usable, and again, on these sort of bumpy roads, the suspension does a much better job than some other Harleys I've ridden. So you can sort of take liberties with it, which again is a sort of a new rider or sort of novice rider or someone who's getting back into biking, or you know, even an experienced rider that just wants a nice easy bike to ride. It's great. You can just jump on this thing and go as fast as you want, and there's no massive surprises. Yes, it does feel a little bit twitchy once you start getting up to silly speeds, and this bike isn't really designed to do silly speeds. This is where it's at really, this sort of speed now, 40 miles an hour, 50 miles an hour, you know, just cruising along in sort of third or fourth gear. It feels great. Oh, it's stalled. It's done that a couple of times now, to be honest. It just sort of pops a little bit, just as you try to blip the throttle, and then just dies. Again, I don't want to keep ripping on fuel injection, but I never get any of these problems with carburetors. Eager, it's quite doesn't mind you thrashing it. Like some other Harleys, when you start revving it up and thrashing it like that, it feels a little bit reluctant to do it. It doesn't actually feel like it wants to be ridden hard, whereas this actually seems quite comfortable with being ridden hard. It feels like a Harley you could use every day, rain or shine, you know, in traffic, out in the countryside, commuting. A proper Harley. See, I'm saying it now, look. I don't know, is this a proper Harley? I don't know. I don't know what constitutes a proper Harley, to be fair. Surely if it's made by Harley Davidson and designed by Harley Davidson, then it's a proper Harley in my eyes. I guess in many ways it's not a proper Harley in the sense that yes, it doesn't have the traditional Harley Davidson air-cooled big V-twin with push rods. I think the biggest thing really is it's not actually an American Harley Davidson, this. This is the first Harley Davidson to be made outside of America. This is actually made in India. The fact that this is made in India I don't think is necessarily a bad thing. I have ridden a fair few Indian bikes. I mean, the KTM Dukes, the 200, 390, 125, they're all made in India, and they're not too shabby. So yeah, I think if it means that they can manufacture a bike like this at a low cost and still churn out a quality product, then I've got no problem with them making bikes abroad. To be honest, I don't think having a bike being made in America it's not always been a byword for quality, has it really, America? So yeah, I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing having a bike being made in India. But again, I can understand why maybe a lot of traditional Harley folks might say, yeah, well, it's not a Harley because it's not made in America. Well, I guess to that I would say, have a look at all the accessories that you bolt onto your Harley Davidson. Have a look at where they're made. Most of them are not made in America. Most of them are made in China, Taiwan. So everything from your seat to your handlebars, your mirrors, even your bloody tyres and stuff, it's very little of the stuff that you're bolting onto your Harley Davidson is actually made in America. So if, like a lot of Harley owners, you like to customise your bike and bolt on loads of different stuff, chances are by the end of it your bike is going to be 25% Chinese. So I guess one of the big questions is, would I prefer this over, say, something like a Sportster, which is nearly £2 more expensive, mine. It's not as visceral as a Sportster, but as an everyday bike, yes, I think I would prefer to live with this. I think the Sportster looks nicer. It's a little bit more exciting, it's a bit more of an event. But saying that, like I said, this is something I'd much rather live with every day because it's a good compromise. It's a bit softer, which means it's a bit easier to ride. The engine's actually better and suits my type of riding a lot better. Okay, it doesn't look as nice as the 883. I think looks is subjective. It's not an ugly bike. But to be honest, I've seen some really nice customised ones actually. So again, if you're looking to get into custom bikes, this is a great blank canvas. There's already a huge amount of aftermarket bits and Harley accessories. So already you can spec this thing right out and make it look like something completely different if you wanted to. But I suspect that most people probably won't. I suspect most people who buy this are probably just going to use it for getting to work, posing on the weekends, and maybe their first sort of introduction into cruisers and Harleys generally. Yeah, you really do have to grab a fistful of brakes. Makes some great noises though. I guess the other big question is, would I pick this over a Japanese bike? Like the XV950 Yamaha, or the 800, is it the V800, the Kawasaki? I think the Kawasaki's got a bit more power. Feels a little bit more substantial than this. I guess really it comes down to a simple choice, doesn't it? Do you want a Japanese bike or do you want a Harley Davidson? I personally, it doesn't really bother me what the brand is and where the bike's made. I would pick it based purely on what sort of bike it is. This is where most of the danger from riding a bike comes from, I think, is filtering. Because people can just, especially when it's like this, when there's big gaps, because people just decide to just suddenly jump into gaps without indicating. So I spend most of my time not actually looking at the road and just looking in people's mirrors, just to see if people have seen me and see if people are looking at me, and just to sort of gauge what people are going to do. Like, when I see people just flying through the middle of traffic like this, ridiculous speeds, it really does make me cringe, to be honest. I might go quickly out on B roads where there's no one around, but when it comes to filtering through traffic, yeah, I'm not going to take the risk. I'm not going to go all banzai, mainly because I don't want to crash, but I don't want to fuck up anyone else's shit either. I don't want to smash into someone's car or something. But, you know, I think the fact that this isn't like a Harley Davidson is it's kind of what I like about it, I think. So yeah, things I change, but straight away change the mirrors. Probably get some longer stem mirrors, something that doesn't quite vibrate quite as much. The seat's actually fine. I don't think I'd change that. I think the foot pegs I'd quite like to change. Maybe get some metal tips on the foot pegs. I think I'd quite like to see if I can get that fuel injection sorted out, because it is a little bit choppy down low, and it has stalled on me a couple of times, just pulling away. But overall, I think, considering the price, and considering the sort of market this bike is aimed at, I think it's a good attempt. And I think it's not, you know, it's not perfect. There's a lot of small little issues with it, but most of those can be overlooked considering the price of this thing. So, for what it is, you know, take the Harley badge away and forget about that for a moment. I think it's actually a very capable bike, and it is the sort of bike that you could quite happily use all day long. How well it fares through a couple of British winters, well, that remains to be seen. But I think Harley have done it. I think they've done an everyday usable Harley that, you know, you don't have to spend all week long polishing and then take out for a few hours dodging puddles and bits of mud. It's a usable workhorse, and it just happens to have a Harley badge. Is it a proper Harley? I don't know, I'll let you decide that. It's not a conventional Harley, but I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. I guess it's kind of changed my preconceptions about what this bike was going to be like, because like I said, a year ago when this thing came out, I didn't really think that much of it. I didn't think it was going to be anything that brilliant. And to be honest, some of the issues that I had with it back then before I rode it probably still exist. But I've definitely got a better appreciation for what this thing is about. And it's certainly not as bad as I thought it was going to be. And there's probably 1,000,001 things that I forgot to mention during this review. And the moment I put this bike away, I'll probably remember all of them. So sorry about that. But that's it. Thanks for watching. I'll see you again.